Welcome to Make Your Remarkable, the podcast where banking meets inspiration. Here, we share stories that spark new ideas, open doors, and remind us what's possible when passion meets purpose. Each week, you'll hear from remarkable guests, leaders, dreamers, doers, and difference makers who bring fresh perspectives on leadership and culture, community connections, and the path to financial success. Wherever you are on your journey, their stories will encourage you to think bigger, live bolder, and make your own remarkable. So let's dive in. It's time to make your remarkable.
Well, welcome to Make Your Remarkable. I'm your host, Philip Bernardi, and today we're exploring the power of collaboration for community well-being, how working together across systems, schools, neighborhoods, and organizations can help every person in our community thrive. Our guest is Erin Thompson Podvin. Hey, Erin.
Hey.
Executive Director of Family Connection Communities and Schools of Athens. Erin leads efforts that connect students, families, and residents with relationships and resources they need to succeed, whether that's in school, at home, or in greater Athens-Clarke community. We'll talk about what collaborative community means to you, building community building in action, the impacts you can have, and practical ways everyone listening can be part of a meaningful change. Erin, we're glad to have you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get into this work? Tell us about your journey and education and community engagement along the way.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll kind of jump in. I found myself in the Athens area because my stepdad's job brought us here. Okay. In the late 80s, 1989, the heyday of REM. And all I knew is we're moving to this town where these guys are singing Stand in the... But so I came and I graduated from Clark Central.
Okay.
And then I left the area. I went to Boston University.
Okay.
And one of the things that I really took with me since a young age was volunteerism. My family always instilled volunteerism. In high school, my mom was on the board of the Athens Area Homeless Shelter. I remember, not to mention cooking meals, but eating dinner there, doing my homework at the shelter. Just, it was a normal part of our life, was really to give back to the place that we lived, so that we could all be better off. So I did a lot of volunteer work in college, alternative spring breaks, and other things around the Boston area. But in the back of my head, and I'm aging myself here, there used to be this commercial that said, the toughest job you'll ever love. And that was about the Peace Corps. And I knew it was always something that was intriguing to me. So my post-college journey led me into the Peace Corps. And I spent about 2.5 years in rural Guatemala as a volunteer in community health. What I did on a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Fancy level was I dug wells, I built latrines, I carried a machete. But I was working and collaborating with the community members to bring things to them, simple, sustainable technologies, like I said, wells, latrines, places to store their harvest, things that they could use to feed their family, that was making their life, their quality of life better, their health. So,
So a product of the Clarke County schools.
Yeah.
Pretty cool to come back.
Yeah.
So talk about what led you back to the schools. From Guatemala back to Clarke County schools.
Yeah. So when I came back, my sister was engaged and I had plans to stay in Athens for 3 months. That was July of 2002.
That's longer than 3 months
3
ago.
months plus 24 years almost we're looking at here.
Yeah.
So I call Athens a good black hole. It has a way of sucking people back, So here we sit. I started, when I came back, I had a skill set that was, I was bilingual in Spanish, started volunteering in the juvenile court. They needed folks who spoke Spanish. That led me sort of on a winding path back to working with our school district, with our migrant education program. So that skill that I had acquired helped me help others. And Athens looked a lot different when I came back in '02 than it did when I graduated in 1994 and left. A lot of that had to do with the Olympics, a lot of population growth that Georgia experienced, the poultry industry here. So we had a change in demographic in our community. And for me, having lived in Guatemala, that was a community that really I connected with and it resonated with me. So it really led my journey toward and much of my work then became working with our Latino population. So,
Interesting.
Yeah,
We
and our
always
immigrant
talk about
population.
our team here, about plugging into the community that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily look the same for me as it does for you, but finding that thing that you're passionate about and leveraging those resources to really benefit
100%.
those things that you're passionate about. So talk a little bit about in your work today, talk a little bit about relationship building. How do you connect people along with the resources that? Talk a little bit about how you go about that.
Yeah. So we're an interesting bird. Our organization, despite having a really long name, Family Connection, Communities and Schools of Athens. And I'll break that down a little bit because Family Connection is unique in that we're the only state in the United States with Family Connection. Started when Zell Miller was governor.
Okay.
And there is a Family Connection collaborative in all 159 counties in Georgia.
Interesting.
And they kind of say, if you've seen one Family Connection, you've seen one Family Connection. So what we do, we are the convener. We are the collaborative convener for Clark County.
Okay.
That is a fancy way of saying we bring people together to look at what are the problems that our community is facing. That's why Family Connection in Oconee County looks different than Barrow County, looks different than Jackson, looks different than here, right? What are the issues that we are really facing and how can we work together to solve them? So by convening, I like to think we bring around the table subject matter experts. We've all heard the saying, jack of all trades, master of none. That's not the best way for us to work. We know that. I need, whatever skills that you bring to bear and whatever skills that this collaborator and this community partner brings to bear, let's put our skill sets together to make a bigger impact.
Interesting.
And expand our reach.
And so how do you go about that? I mean, how do you connect with the community?
Sure.
How do you have a need. How do you go about building those relationships and connecting folks?
So it's a lot. It's funny. You do become this sort of yellow pages in your own head of knowing, okay, who to talk to and who really understands, whether we're talking about, food insecurity or workforce development or housing instability, health, physical or mental health, those go-to people that can move needles. So one way is we do come together as agencies. We try to come together once a month and talk. And some months we might do bring a speaker together to talk about something that's affecting all of us. Sometimes we're just there to talk and say like, hey, this is what's really bubbling to the top, and think about ways that we can work to solve those problems together. But another unique way that we work, that our organization works, and I realize I haven't addressed the communities and schools side, but another unique way that we work is we collaborate with the Athens Clark County government. They are a big funder of our work, and we have 19 folks on our team called neighborhood leaders.
Okay.
And the neighborhood leaders work out in the community. They are boots on the ground, and they are located in it's loosely every elementary school zone. So they're called prosperity zones. There are 14 elementary school zones in Clark County. There are 16 prosperity zones.
I gotcha.
And then we have 3 folks that focus specifically on SNAP outreach. So folks that need to connect with SNAP benefits. So those folks are working on a hyper local level. They are neighborhood. You know how you have the unofficial mayors in the neighborhood?
Oh, yeah.
We've got the mayor, but then you have the person that you can pick up and call. These are the folks that are moving and have built trust in their areas. Many of them live in the neighborhoods where they work or the areas where they work. Maybe were raised there, know the resources in the areas, know the problems that are really facing the areas. So they can really drill down and focus and try to help build the capacity of the residents that they're working with.
And those are the boots on the ground.
Those are the boots on the ground.
The making those connections.
Yes, making those connections.
Sure.
And then they work together when we're talking about collaboration. So the other side of our name and another big piece of our work, Communities in Schools, is a national dropout prevention organization.
Okay.
CIS works on, we like to say, we call them the ABCs, and we say, what are the non-academic barriers to kids being academically successful? And we try to focus in the areas of attendance, behavior, and course completion. So, why is Philip acting out in class? Well, he's acting out because he can't see the board, and a pair of glasses would help him read the board and be able to follow along. Why is, Susie sleeping in class? Well, Susie is unhoused right now, and she's not getting consistent food, and she doesn't know where she's laying her head tonight. And it's some of those things. So we're working on those pieces that aren't the reading, writing, and arithmetic, but that really affect a student's ability to learn, to focus, and to be successful.
Interesting. Well, I was going to give you a hard time because you did date yourself with the Yellow Page reference.
I know, right?
And so, for the younger listeners, that's like Google from back in the day.
Yes, it was a real book, y'all.
So when you talk about fostering collaboration amongst so many different organizations and you have competing interests.
Totally.
We talk a lot about at the bank is like my view of the world may look very different than somebody else, but we have to come together and collaborate to achieve the mission of the bank and our community. There's several competing interests there. So how do you navigate that? How do you address those challenges to keep the focus on what you're really trying to do within the schools and the community?
That's a great question. It can be hard. At the end of the day, we all, I think, want to believe that it's a dance because you're thinking about how do I keep my staff, employed? How do we have to think about things like fundraising. We have to think about developing, support and partners. And you can get a lot of competing interests in those spaces, especially in a town, in an area, in a community that's, let's face it, we're not that big, and you've got a lot of players. There's a lot of numbers that get thrown around regularly about how many nonprofits we have. It's in the several hundreds. Now, some of those are very small nonprofits who, it might be someone who does it on the part-time, it's a passion project. And others are, I have a team of 35, other nonprofits are large in our community as well. And we have to function like a business. So you're having to think about those pieces while also thinking about sometimes putting that aside to say, how are we going to come together around these issues that this matters to all of us. This is going to affect all of us. So there's a lot of conversation with other nonprofit leaders. You have to humble yourself and you have to remember that the issue or what we're trying to work on is bigger than us. And you have to not really be worried about who gets the credit. Yeah. You really can't be worried about who gets the credit. You need to know that, we did that and that was great. And maybe you get a slap on the back or maybe you get a shout out and maybe you don't, but there's people that are sleeping easier or there's people that have food, on their plate or there's people that now have housing because you put aside ego and you put aside, your own personal interests or the interests of your organization being in the limelight.
That's right. We always talk about our mission and vision at the bank. Yeah. And it doesn't matter who gets the credit as long as we're living out that mission and vision. And so trying to put ego aside and not making it about one person, but the greater good. And I'm sure you run into that quite often. Yeah.
And we have to, let's all be honest, we want our name. We want people to know who we are when we say FCCIS. We want people to recognize our logo or know things that we're doing in the community. And that's always a delicate dance, but
and it's one that I'm sure, how long have you been in the role again?
So I'm coming up on 2 years.
Gotcha. And so I'm sure you've, spent the first 18, 24 months just learning all of the players that are. Talk a little bit about coming into the role, how you were able to kind of assess where you were at and more importantly, where you're going as an organization.
Good question. So I will say I do have a little bit of history with the organization. I am a past board member, and that that was, again, as a result of collaboration, because when I was on the board, I was working for the Clark County School District at the time in our family and community engagement space.
Okay.
And so I served as I was the proxy for then Superintendent Zernona Thomas on the Family Connection Communities and Schools Board. So that was sort of my first foray. I knew the organization, had collaborated with the organization, worked with the neighborhood leaders, worked with the site coordinators in my work in CCSD. But it was my first time sitting at the board table, understanding sort of how the sausage is made, you know, how you keep the doors open. And was there to go through some strategic planning, and was there when the former executive director announced sort of a long timeline to retirement. And then I went about my way. I actually moved on, and Philip and I met through ESP. So after CCSD, I spent a couple years at ESP. And it's interesting. I think we go along and put things in our toolbox that prepare us for our next step in life, for our next career move, for our next life journey. And I can say without question, you know, things that I learned as I, you know, helped grow out some new roles at ESP that never existed, and helped to build processes and refine in a time of change. Those helped arm me for what I'm doing now, because I came into this role. I followed a founder. He had been there over 30 years. And the organization had been a variety of iterations of itself. So, but at a time where we had to look at some change to be relevant, to be solvent. You know, so it's been a lot of refining process. We established core values for ourselves. We revisited our mission and our vision. I am blessed to have a hands-on working board. And I think that you can't do things in isolation. You really have to lean on people's strengths, the same way that we bring those community partners around the table and say, you know, homelessness, you can talk about food access, you can talk about this, and we need to wrap around our residents. I need to lean on my board members and say, you're an attorney and you can read this contract, and you're a banker and you can help as we're looking at, you know, do we have the best banking, you know, accounts that we need? And you got to lean on all of that and work together.
I always say that challenges in the rearview mirror are just opportunities to learn and grow.
Yes.
At the time, it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
But those challenges, really, when you look back, you're like, man, that made me who I am today, or positioned me really well for that.
Absolutely.
And you just got to navigate that so that you come out stronger on the back end.
It's so true. And I think the best leaders are those that can realize that we don't know everything. And one of the things that I've always been very upfront about is, if I don't know the answer, I'm not going to tell you I know the answer. I'm going to try to find the person that knows the answer. And I consider myself a connector. It's ironic. When people ask, how do you describe yourself? I say, I'm a connector. One of my favorite things is when I can introduce two people and say, you all have this in common. It could be anything from, like, you both like to quilt, to like, you both, you know, have a passion for XYZ, and then kind of stand back and see how that bubbles and what comes of that connection. So that I am, you know, leading an organization called Family Connection is really neat. And I think that, you know, making those connections that are going to better our community is really important.
That's pretty awesome. So you're the chief connector.
At
Family
I like
Connections.
that. Yes. You might, if you see that on my LinkedIn, you know, later, I think I call myself a caffeinated connector.
Oh, I like that.
I can't do this without caffeine too.
Amen to that.
Yes. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about, you know, 2 years in the role, you kind of got your feet under you. What does the future look like for Family Connection? What is your vision for what the organization can be and where y'all are heading?
So we like to say that when communities connect, people thrive. So I think when we go about our work, and as we're changing, I think we try to, or as we're growing and refining things and sort of looking, we keep that in mind of how can we help our community. They say a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So how can we all be a little bit better off? Now, for the organization, that means our team is better off. One of the things I know about our organization, many of the jobs in our organization, they aren't jobs where people are going to stay forever. But if we can equip people in those jobs for the next version of who's their next best version, and they're ready to step into that next thing, that means that we're building our community members, that we're building their capacity. And then, when those team members turn around and develop their residents and build their capacity so that they have, self-efficacy, and they can have confidence in, advocating for themselves and advocating for their child. A parent who has limited English proficiency, but they know, like, I know how to advocate for my child, when there's an issue at school. Those are big things. Those are huge. We all want to feel like we can have some ownership of our own situation. So I'm winding a little bit, but I think what we really want to do is connect people either to the people or the resources, whether it's my staff, whether it's our residents, whether it's another community partner, whether it's a donor with an issue they're passionate about, so that they can plug in where they want to plug in and collectively help all of us, move forward.
That's awesome. We talk oftentimes at the bank, and you use the word equip and develop, and constantly doing that with team members. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to be here. But if you leave here, you go off and make the world a better place wherever that is. And taking the skills and the lessons that you've learned into whatever that environment may be.
For sure. I think another thing, and I'd be remiss, I would think a lot of nonprofits, this is a tough landscape right now for nonprofits. Funding uncertainties. We had a scary time back in the fall, as many others did. I mentioned that some of my staff does SNAP outreach. I think last fiscal year numbers, or maybe the year before, my team brought $9 million in SNAP outreach. Like that's $9 million that was offset for people in our community that by having those SNAP benefits, they could put that money toward other things, maybe fixing a car so they could get to a job, maybe paying their rent, maybe keeping a light bill on or a water bill, paying for, any other things, a course so they could better themselves, and gain some credentialing or a technical skill. So by bringing those things into the community, so when SNAP benefits went crazy, I mean, like our partners at the food bank, our team, I mean, those were scary times. And we don't know what's coming down the pike. You never know for sure. But the landscape right now is a little bit tenuous. So I think we're all having to learn how to be very nimble. And that is one of the things, it's a challenge as a leader in the nonprofit space. You really do have to think about, how do you do less with more? But at the same time, I don't think that should be the refrain, that nonprofits should do less with more. Because I just mentioned, we employ 35 people. That's 35, mortgages or rent payments, and people contributing to this community and buying groceries here and living their lives and raising families and having the ripple effect of, being consumers and producers. And that's important. And 35 jobs is something you feel, especially when it's 35 jobs here and 40 jobs there. So we're really trying to think about ways that we have to keep our eyes, we have to be very aware of the landscape. We have to think about creative ways to work together. And it goes back to that collaboration. How do we work with some of our other community partners and say, hey, could we partner on this? Maybe work together and share the load, also share the benefits. And nimble is a big thing that is in the front of my mind a lot right now.
Well, if you ever find as a leader the crystal ball that predicts the future, you could just share that with me. That would be really helpful.
No kidding. Oh my gosh.
So talk a little bit just personally about how have you made your remarkable with where you are? That's obviously the name of our podcast, but for you personally, how have you made remarkable?
Wow. I love that question. For y'all listening, I did not have this question prompted to me. This is a cold ask here. How have I made my remarkable? So coming in, very steep learning curve.
Mhm.
And there's things that I think in any organization, it doesn't matter where you go. If you're a new leader, if you're moving into a new role within your organization, there are things you're going to bring along.
Yeah.
There are things you're going to say, this is no longer the best and highest use of our time. And then there's things that you're going to tweak a little bit. So there was a lot of that. You're learning, you're tweaking, you're assessing. So every day what I would try to do is find my win, you know? And I think in that way, keeping positive, and there's been, we've had some tough times and looking at staff and knowing, we didn't know last year, every year when we go before mayor and commission and there's a budget that's set, it's, what's the budget going to look like? Will we get the funding that we need for the positions? Are we going to be able to look at giving people a little bit of a bump this year? Are we not? It's all those things. It's those big things that can keep you up at night. And you can get to a negative place quickly if you let yourself. So I like to think my remarkable is trying to keep a positive attitude, even if the small win that day was we found the key to that closet that nobody could find.
That's a huge win sometimes.
It is. And so I think you do have to think about those things. And I think another piece of it is remembering that I'm a mom and a partner and a community member, and I need to still remember that I need to be poured into, and that my family needs to be poured into, and that I have to sometimes step away so that I can be the best version of myself. So that's pretty. That might be a basic remarkable, but I think even just keeping that top of mind, like sometimes it's time to walk away from this because there is a baseball game and there's somebody that needs you there, right?
Yeah.
And other times you might miss the baseball game because this community need is going to take a priority, but there needs to be balance.
Yeah.
It can't be all or
We often talk
none.
I talk often about work-life integration.
Yes.
Is when you show up, you don't stop being mom.
No.
You don't stop being a leader.
Yeah.
You don't stop being a partner, but you have to balance all of those. But you can never get them in balance, but you have to learn to integrate them together. So
that's very true.
So what, fast forward 30 years from now, what do you want to leave behind at Family Connection?
Ooh.
What do you want your legacy to be there of the things you brought and where the organization is?
I think that if people know that I cared, that was, and that might seem, that might sound flowery, but I really, I firmly believe, my husband and I, and again, it goes back to my upbringing, but we do believe that we both have a responsibility to our community, the community that's providing us opportunities. We do have a responsibility, every one of us, and it's a collective responsibility. And if we all do a little bit, we'll all be a little bit better off. So I think if I can let people know that, I played my part and that, again, it's a team effort. So I don't need to leave in 30 years and it was, the Erin show. That's not what this is about. If I can say that our organization helped people, like I said, thrive. And your thrive looks different than my thrive. But a lot of our neighbors are barely surviving right now or getting by or trying to survive or, but thriving is different. And I think if we could help our community feel like, okay, today was a good day.
Yeah.
And
find those wins.
Yeah. And find those wins. I think that I would consider that an accomplishment.
Well, that's awesome. So if I want to learn more about Family Connection and learn more about the work that you're doing and how to maybe benefit, because you did say all 159 counties, there's a similar organization in every community that the bank is in and across the state of Georgia.
Yeah.
So tell us how we find out more specifically about Family Connection.
Sure. So for us here locally, obviously, I'd say, come visit our website. We're at fc-cis.org. Or you can follow us on our social media channels. We are going to have some new opportunities coming up. I'm gonna, give a little teaser of some things to come. Well, I guess it's not even a teaser. It's just, stay tuned.
Okay.
But we have some new things coming up, and we're actually working on bringing back some legacy things from the, like I said, we've been here 30 plus years in the community.
Yeah.
So stay tuned in the coming months. Follow us, visit our website. To see some of the things that we're going to be doing. But Family Connection, if you want to know more about Family Connection specifically, you can visit the Georgia Family Connection Collaborative has a website and find out what it is in your county. I'll give an example. We aren't all called Family Connection. For those in Oconee County, it's the Oconee Area Resource Council, OARC, as some might know. So we go by different names sometimes, but we fall under the same umbrella of wanting to convene people in our communities that can tackle those big problems and try and make our communities a place where everybody is better off.
That is awesome. And tell me, so the caffeinated connector.
Yeah.
So you personally, how can we reach out and find you, whether it's on LinkedIn or on social media?
Yep. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. Gosh, I should know my Instagram handle, but I don't.
Put you on the spot. Sorry.
I know. But yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Erin Thompson Podvin. And yeah, caffeinated connector, energetic empath, bilingual boy mom. There you have me.
Bilingual. I love it. Well, thank you for being on being on the podcast. We love hearing what you're doing in the community. It aligns so well with what we're doing and trying to live out our value of communities. And thank you so much for being on.
Thank you. And thank you for this opportunity. I don't want to steal the last word, but I want to say that, as a nonprofit, we appreciate the for-profit community. Neither of us can do our work alone, right? And I think that it means a lot when folks take the time to listen and hear about what we're doing and different ways that we can creatively work together.
If we don't do that as a bank, we're just any other bank.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you saying that.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Make Your Remarkable. If you enjoyed the conversation, leave us a review, share it with a friend, or follow us on social media at Oconee State Bank and at remarkable_mortgage for more remarkable insights. And remember, at the heart of every journey, it's not about the process. It's about the purpose you're building, one bold step at a time. Until next time, keep making your remarkable.